Hello, beautiful human. I'm Zach. That is Dan. And we welcome to the studio a gem of Canada, a blessing to the Great White North. I don't want to pronounce your last name wrong. Cardin?
Cardin is perfect.
Charlotte Cardin is here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.
It's like those simple ones that like they scare me the most.
Yeah, I mean, well, the French Canadian way to pronounce it is Cardin, but Cardin is perfectly fine.
That was way prettier.
Well, but Cardin is perfect.
You speak
can just
French?
Yes, I'm French Canadian.
Sick.
Yeah.
Sick. And your parents are really smart.
My parents.
You come from crazy lineage.
Yes, that's the first time. It's a first for me opening the interview like that. But yes, my parents are very smart. They're both scientists.
Yeah.
They're much smarter than I am.
Dude, they both have PhDs.
They both have PhDs.
Your dad is does biotech patents and shit.
Yeah.
That's so smart.
Very smart.
That's crazy.
Yes. And I'm the weird one in the family. I'm the only artist. But both my parents are kind of like, they love music and they love art. They just have a very rational brain at the same time. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm the creative one in the family.
But do you take any of that? I mean, you have to have some of that same sense and knowledge instilled in you, right? Like your parents can't just be that smart and methodical and logical and mathematical and the whole thing and not have some of that be passed down to you. Yeah,
well, I hope they pass down a little bit of their intelligence. But it's kind of, I remember in school, my mom, so both my parents are they love, especially my mom, she loves learning and she loves school. She's an academic person. So I remember she would gladly help me with my homework growing up. It was like a game for her. It was she's passionate about teaching and helping me learn things. So they definitely passed on some nice things to me, but just not the scientific side of the brain. I'm not the most mathematical or scientific person.
What part of making music though takes the most brain power?
That's true. And there is some kind of I kind of see music in a very logical, almost mathematical way sometimes, when I think of harmonizing and how notes just kind of all arrange themselves very intuitively. I think that's probably a side of my brain that's somewhat mathematical, but in a very, in an artistic way, rather than when you get the bill after your meal at the restaurant and you need to add tips. That's when my heart starts racing and I'm like, I should have learned more from my mom when she was teaching me math. It's just I can't do it.
But when you're looking at music from a mathematical place, does that apply to structure? Or is that applying to just harmonies? Where do you see that?
I mean, I don't really think about it, and it just kind of it's like an intuition. But I think yes, music structure, music is a very mathematical thing. We hear music and the wavelengths that we hear, all of that makes perfect sense. A song and notes that go together, they go together for a reason. It's not just you can't just mix any note together and then the human ear will just not perceive it in the right way. So there is a part of math and a part of something that's very logical about music, but there's also obviously a huge part of, I don't see music fully as science. It's just a little part of it for me that's kind of like that.
Your story is pretty wild. You start as a model, but you make it into music in a very real way. And you not only you are the biggest thing in Canada. I was on the radio for 5 years. I mean, you're up there. You really are. You sweep the Junos a couple times now.
Once last year, yeah.
Yeah, but you come on, this can happen again. Yeah. But that's the honor. There's nothing, right? There's nothing bigger than that.
Well, in Canada, yeah, that was a huge honor, definitely, and especially, it was really cool because it was with my debut album. And I come from Quebec, which is the French part of Canada, and the Junos is it's an award show, but it's rare that you'll see Quebec artists that are represented at the Junos, just because Quebec has its own music artistic ecosystem. So it's hard for artists to cross over and to come out of Quebec and to cross over to the rest of Canada.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think it's because there is a different culture in Quebec. The language is different, but even just the whole culture is different in Quebec. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a different part of a country, there is a very sustainable music ecosystem in Quebec, and there's an amazing grant system. So what happens is that a lot of Quebec-based artists just end up staying in Quebec for a really long time and just touring the same cities over and over. And you can have a beautiful career doing that. But I always had bigger ambitions. I always wanted, and my music is mostly in English. So obviously I wanted to speak to not only the Quebec people, which are, I come from Quebec, but I wanted my music to reach as many people as I could. And so the Junos for that to me was the honor, because it's really cool to be an artist from Quebec that kind of crosses over to other parts of Canada. That to me was just okay, this is cool. It's not something that happens that often to a Quebec-based artist. So
you mentioned the grant system, which is Canada is the best maybe in the world.
Yeah.
As it relates to supporting artists. I mean, supporting film and television, but mainly musical artists. I know CanCon. I know about the percentage of a radio playlist that has to belong to a producer, a writer, or an artist that is Canadian.
Yeah.
It's actually really special.
Yeah.
And I know that there's people in public office here in America who are trying to do something similar that spans starting early education and beyond as it relates to the arts and music, and giving more of an opportunity to artists to be seen and heard.
Yeah. And to be artists. It's really hard to start in music, because obviously it's just, you don't make money for a really long time, and you need to buy all that gear and instruments, and you need to pay everything yourself. But it's true that in Canada we're really blessed because we have really good grant systems, and same in Quebec. I've had a lot of help from the government, and I still for some parts of the project we still do, we apply for grants still, and I've been releasing music for 10 years, but we still have access to certain grants, and it's just, that's amazing because it allows artists to exist, and
it truly democratizes music.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that's definitely a blessing that we have in Canada and in Quebec. Definitely
Democratizes music, restores local artistry, and heightens cultural export while giving its own an opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And I know that when I first started, we were able to tour with, I was on a few supporting tours for American artists, and I was able to tour a little bit in the States, opening for a couple artists, and that was only possible because of grants. Because when you think about it, when you're starting as an artist, it's so expensive, and it's you make $200 a show, and it's it doesn't even start to cover the expenses of the hotels and the traveling and the food and the everything. So it's it just wouldn't have been possible for me to tour and to start showing my music outside of my hometown if it wasn't for the grant systems, basically.
It's cool.
Yeah, I'm really lucky.
First of all, it's not Quebec? Have I been saying that wrong my entire life?
Well, a lot of people say Quebec, but I say, in French it's Quebec, so I think Quebec is a closer translation.
Oh, so Quebec. Drop it. Quebec.
All
right, how are you able to break out of there and not become one of those artists that just stayed locally?
Well, I'm still working on that. My main fan base is still in Montreal, and so, but I think it was just a step-by-step thing. So it was, as I mentioned, we toured a lot, we invested a lot of money in touring. And that's the thing, is that when you try to, grow your project, you need to make those decisions. And if you want to just keep making money as an artist, you can just keep touring locally. But we made those choices to go to Europe and to tour very small venues and try to, build from the ground up. And it's just been a very kind of organic growth. None of what I'm experiencing now has happened overnight. The first single I put out was it was like maybe 8 years ago, and I've been working every day nonstop on my music since. And so we're starting to have like a fan base that's like super, loyal and interesting in a few different places, but we're still, I'm still very much of an emerging project everywhere outside of Canada. But that's also really fun because it allows me to like never take anything for granted. Like I feel like I'll play a show in Canada or in my hometown, and it's just like we play big venues, like we have a big audience. It's just it's a super fun experience. And then we'll also play smaller shows, more intimate venues, and play music that people have never heard before. And there's also that like that first time feeling of like showing my music. So all of that is super exciting for me, and it just it keeps me grounded and focused, and it's just nice to be able to experience both and hopefully just keep growing the project that way.
Are you talking about Big Boy, which was your debut EP? Is that like the mark of you officially getting into music, or do you mark The Voice?
No, I mark Big Boy as my The Voice was like, so I was 17 when I first, auditioned for The Voice. Like I had never done anything professionally that was tied to music. Like I had been writing songs for a little bit, and I had been singing forever. Like it was my passion, but I didn't really think it was necessarily like something that was possible for me to do.
Why not?
I think because like I come, as you
You're
mentioned,
going to be a doctor.
I mean, that was in my mind. I was like, I'll follow my parents' footsteps. Like I'll, go to school forever and be a doctor. But my heart was just not, didn't want that. Obviously, I just didn't have like a reference of someone in my circle that was an artist. So to me, it was like, I don't know if that's like something that's possible. I don't know if I'm good enough for this. I don't know. Like I didn't have any like reference as to what it took for me to become an artist. And so it was kind of a bit of a coincidence that I even went to the audition for The Voice. A friend of mine, like the day of, was like, there's like a first edition of The Voice that we're having in Quebec, and you should audition. And I had never auditioned for anything. I was like, oh, I don't know. And he was just like, you can do your homework later. Like just take like an hour and go audition. It's just like a cool challenge that you can set for yourself. And I was like, okay, like I'll take the challenge. I'll just audition for something that's like super out of my comfort zone. Like I've never done this before. And I auditioned, and just like one thing led to another, and I made it to the finals of that first edition. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, and it was weird because I was like, I had no expectations out of it. I was just like, wow, like this is, a big TV set. This is kind of crazy. Okay, this is happening. And like every step of the way, I was like, oh, I made it to the next round and to the next round. And I was with all these people that were like putting all their hopes into the experience. And I was just like, I'm just chilling. Like, this is so fun. Like, but it's also so like not representative of what a career in music is like. Like when you're on a show like that, it's like, you sing a minute and a half in front of like millions of people that are watching you on TV, and that's it. And then like people start talking about you. And then when you get off the show, that's when the real work starts, because it's like you need to do everything starting from there. And especially given the fact that sometimes you even start with a little bit of a, people are a little bit apprehensive of like, oh, this person was like on a few steps back. A few steps back. In some ways, like I know that a part of my fan base discovered me on that show years ago, but my entire fan base, I had to, go conquer each and every person through like touring in like shitty little venues and bars and, just doing the whole thing all over again. Like it wasn't something that, I didn't get off the show and was like, okay, like I'm set for life. Like it's just the real work started after.
I'm rich now.
I'm rich.
I'm Canada famous.
Yeah.
Are you happy you didn't win though? Because they probably locked you into those like awful contracts, right?
I think about that every single day.
Really?
Like I swear it haunts me. I have bad dreams about winning the show. Like people don't know, but it's true. It's like, it's the most horrible thing that can happen. I mean, I don't know how it is now, but contract wise, what happens is that before you're even on TV for the first time, so before that blind audition, they have everyone sign the exact same contract, and the winner of the show is like tied to that contract.
Ugh.
But it's like knowing that, I didn't know anything about like contracts and music labels, and you sign a contract that's like, it's the same for everyone. It's a cookie cutter contract that's really not in favor of the artist, and you're just tied for 4 or 5 albums to like a music label that's not necessarily the best label you could sign to. And it's just, I think about this every day. And like, as soon as you win, they want you to release an album like 6 months later, because people are going to forget you 6 months later. So it's like, you need to, so they have people write songs for you. Like I knew that I wanted to write my own songs, but it took me 3 years after the show to figure out what genre I wanted, what I wanted to share with people. So it's just, I think about that all the time. And like, I thank God that I didn't win.
For real.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It did take you a while to release original music.
It took me a long time. Yeah. I feel like I didn't know myself at all as an artist when I was on that show. Like as I mentioned, I was a teenager. Like I just loved singing, loved writing my own little love songs in my bedroom. And like, but when it comes to like, being like, oh, I want to do this for a living, who am I as an artist? Like, I feel like 10 years in, I'm still like figuring it out. Like I'm still, playing around with different genres and learning about myself every single day and learning about music. And so 10 years ago, I was like, so after I got off the show, I like completely, I traveled for a year. I like tried to live and just, go on adventures and experience different things and figure out who I was as a person and as an artist in order to, make music that was going to be good and that I was going to like, because I didn't know who I was as an artist back then.
So how many songs do you write before you feel comfortable releasing an EP?
That EP was that very first EP was kind of a compilation of the best songs that I had written my entire life. So I had a lot of
up until that point.
Up until that point. I think there was just like 4 or 5 songs on the EP, but I had written a lot of songs, but a lot of them sucked, and a lot of them were just like me playing around with different styles, trying to figure out what I liked, and but I guess as I was writing more music and I started working with my producer Jason back then, and he also kind of helped me. We like played around together with different genres and figured out the path that I wanted to take. And I had written a lot of songs until I chose the ones I wanted on Big Boy. But it was kind of my life's work up until the first EP.
What parts of Big Boy do you take with you to Phoenix?
That's a really good question. To me, so it's funny because Big Boy to me is like an imaginary person that's a compilation of a lot of relationships that I've been in, and it's kind of this like entity that's like an imaginary concept, but that's also very rooted in like real things that I've experienced. And I go back to Big Boy when I write love songs all the time. This like person who's not really one person, but who's like a bit of this person mixed with this person. Big Boy is like kind of like my helper when I write songs. Like I feel like he's always kind of there. That makes no sense, but it's just like I have this like an imaginary world that helps me write songs all the time, but the imaginary world is very fueled with like a lot of, all of my relationships I've ever been in, everyone I've ever met, like everything I've experienced. And Big Boy, which is like, it's obviously the name of the first song I've ever put out, but it's also a concept that I like to keep alive, and I fuel Big Boy a little bit. And there's a song on this upcoming album, 99 Nights, that's called Way Back. And when I wrote the song, I was thinking about this imaginary / very real figure, Big Boy. So Big Boy is always kind of there.
So that's interesting. Like, is it like a sonic guide or like what? It's
like a little bit of everything. Yes. So it's kind of sonically, Big Boy is like very stripped down, super simple. It includes a little bit of like jazz influences, a little bit of electro, but as a theme, like as an image, Big Boy is just kind of like, because whenever I write a love song, and a lot of my songs are love songs, it's not always about one person. You know, it's like I think you can write about an emotion, you can write about a feeling, and it can be very precise without it being exactly about one specific moment or one specific person. But I am talking to this figure, Big Boy, when I write love songs often. Not in every single love song I've ever written, but I go back to this person that's built out of little parts of different people I met.
That's really interesting. And how does that influence 99 Nights?
I mean, it hasn't really influenced 99 Nights. Like the Big Boy thing is kind of something I like to go back to sometimes, but I feel like I've evolved a lot ever since, I put out that first song.
So do you carry something from Phoenix to 99 Nights?
A lot of different things. I feel like Phoenix was kind of it was a very therapeutic album. I like went back to old wounds and addressed them and reopened them and kind of found it very liberating to go back to those and to write about the trauma. And there is a little bit of that same process in 99 Nights, but in a much healthier way, where it's like for this album, writing music was very much of a therapy, but because I used it in a very positive way, it wasn't like a sad process. It was very much of an uplifting one. And I think you can kind of hear that in the album. It's an album that's very bittersweet in a lot of ways because I wrote it at a time where I was going through a lot. But the moments that I was having in the studio were the best moments of that summer where we wrote the album. And that's why it's called 99 Nights, is because it represents that summer. But I guess, using music as a therapy is something that I've kind of always done in different ways. And I feel like I'm finally, or at least for this album, it was finally something that I was able to access in a positive way. Like therapy that doesn't rip your heart out, but therapy that just makes you feel good. So I guess that's kind of probably the one thing that I've carried, every single time I've written a song from Big Boy to now. And
in this case, therapy that like is yours, but now will become everybody else's.
Yes. Well, hopefully, like I know that as like someone who loves listening to music, I'm able to identify certain emotions, listening to other people sing about them and sing about their stories. So hopefully my music can do that for other people too. Yeah.
I want to talk about Confetti. Really great record.
Thank you.
Where are you at when this record comes? I mean, yes, there's a TikTok star who's producing it, but like, do you listen to the production first, or is it a story that you want to tell? Like, what comes first in that situation?
Confetti actually came together very quickly, kind of like all at once. We wrote that song in like a couple hours. It was like a very intuitive, creative process. I wrote it with my friend Lubalin, who's an amazing songwriter.
We know Lubalin.
Yeah, and he's a TikTok
he's
legend. Oh yeah, cool. I didn't
That's
know.
really cool.
Yeah, we wrote that song in like a couple. We're both like, it's a song about like, being an introvert at a party, which we both very much related to, and so it kind of felt like we had been accumulating lyrics our entire life without really knowing. And so it was just a very like easy, spontaneous process. Like the lyrics just like were flowing when we wrote the song, and the beat kind of just,
How do you guys connect?
We connected through Jason, my producer, who Jason owns a music label, a record label in Montreal, and that's the first label I was signed to, called Nation. And Lubalin is also signed to that label, so that we were connected through Jason. But Lubalin actually wrote the chorus for the song Phoenix, and that's the first time that I was introduced to his music. That was way before he blew up on TikTok. Jason was like, this guy I'm about to sign is a fucking amazing songwriter. And he's like, listen to this. And it was the Phoenix chorus. And my eyes watered and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so beautiful. And I was like, I wonder if he would be down for me to, just like take that chorus and write the rest of the song. And he was super open to it. And so we kind of, that was our first collaboration. But Lubalin co-wrote almost the entire second album with me, 99 Nights. He's like implicated on almost all of the songs. He's a really good producer, songwriter. Yeah.
So you also took like the best collaborators from the last album and you brought them with you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this album was really made with my like little Montreal circle of like close friends. And I feel like you can kind of hear that. It's a playful album that I made with people that I love and who I'm very close to. And what happened is like the first phase of the creative process was with my close friends in Montreal. So like Jason Lubalin, my bassist Matt, who has produced a few things on the album as well. And then the second phase of the album was like, okay, let's like elevate these songs and take them to like other producers that we've wanted to work with for a long time, and let's just like have like a fresh perspective on songs we've been working on for a long time. And so we worked with producers in London and LA and Toronto and kind of finished the demos and wrote a couple more songs for the album to kind of like package it and finish it. But
how do you know it's done?
You never know it's done. It never feels like it's done. I just have to I have to talk to myself and be like, okay, like it's time to let go, or else it's just never done. In my case.
Is this the most pressure-filled release you've ever had?
Not really. Like people have been asking that a lot. I think probably because Phoenix was, well received and but I don't know. I don't feel that way. I feel like, this album for me is like a diary of a summer, of a very specific moment in time. And I'm just excited to share the songs with people, and hopefully some people will feel good listening to it, will feel all kinds of emotions and relate to the stories. And yeah, I don't feel that kind of, I mean, of course I would love for people to love the album, but no, I don't feel that kind of, I feel like it's more exciting. The fact that the first album had some kind of success and a lot of people discovered my music through that first album, it's just exciting for the next steps, and hopefully they like the second one.
Is Daddy's a Psycho and Daddy? Do those songs have anything in common?
No.
Or you just like the word daddy?
I just like the word daddy.
Okay.
Yeah, Daddy, the song on Phoenix is like daddy in kind of a sexy way, whereas Daddy's a Psycho is like father figure daddy. It's just two different daddies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Who's Daddy and Daddy's a Psycho? Is that your daddy? It's like weird saying daddy so many times.
Yeah. It's a mix of, a part of it is influenced by my dad. A part of it is influenced by the dads of the other people I wrote the song with. We all kind of bonded over very personal things writing the song, and it's there's a lot of storytelling involved in songwriting as well, so it's not all about personal things. But yes, it was somewhat influenced by my relationship with my dad. We have a really good relationship overall. My dad is great, but it's a complicated relationship in a lot of ways as well. So some parts of the song were definitely inspired by our relationship, and some were not. And then some were also influenced by, other people's relationships with their dads that helped me write the song.
Is this album really like a collection of everybody you wrote it with? Because I heard you on another interview say like, we released the first album this year, and then it's like, so it's not you, it's we.
Yeah, it always feels like it's we. I mean, especially this album. Like my first EPs, I wrote everything by myself. I was very much like, I don't want to, I want my songwriting to be like just me. I needed to figure out as well, like what I wanted to say as an artist. So I think it was really important for me in those first projects to just, tell those stories from my perspective. And that process got very lonely after after a moment. And I think, it's just, I felt like I could learn a lot about working with really good songwriters, and there was something where I didn't feel threatened as an artist anymore working with other people, because I knew who I was as an artist, or I knew a little bit more who I was as an artist. And so that voice didn't feel threatened by having other people add to the storytelling. But especially this album, it was made with my friends in Montreal, and with, other people afterwards. But it feels like a collective process. I'm very implicated in the songwriting always. I love songwriting, and obviously those stories are told from my perspective, like they're my stories, but it feels like a collective project in a lot of ways, because I do surround myself with really important collaborators that, help me be playful with sounds and instruments and lyrics, and just take my music in different directions. And yeah, it does feel like that.
There's something like, if it's not broken, like, why would you fix it? But also, you get to be vulnerable and grow with these people, so it shows new creative sides.
Absolutely. And I feel like I've never been as vulnerable in my music as I have been since I started songwriting with people who are close to me, because I feel like I would probably censor myself a little bit more when I was, or gaslight myself when I was writing alone, and be like, oh, I'm not going to talk about this. But when you're in a room with two of your closest friends and they're like, why did you say that? Or why did you feel that way? There's no lying to yourself anymore. It's just a conversation. And then it's oh, well, it brings out certain things that you probably wouldn't have thought of if you were just by yourself writing music. So it does feel like my music has never been as personal as it is. Yeah. As it has been since I've been collaborating with people.
How much of these songs, is everybody in all of them? Obviously, yes. But how much life do you have to live to really get a whole album? Or do you really just rely on everybody and you take that and take moments from your story and milk?
I think, there, between the first album and the second album, there's a good 2.5 years. And I kind of went through a lot on my end. Yeah. So I feel like I had a lot to say and maybe at some point I'll be like, I need to write an album and I don't really know what I want to talk about. So, but it hasn't happened to me yet.
Do you only start when you're ready to, when you know what you want to talk about?
Unfortunately not. I have to start when I'm not touring, and when it's the right moment. There is a little bit of logistics implicated in writing an album, but there is also a part of okay, I'm feeling inspired now. I think it would be the right time to start writing an album. But it's something that we need to book in advance and to plan in the calendar. So it feels, but yeah, I feel definitely writing with other people also helps you, the ideas kind of flow a little bit easier, because you can also feed off someone else's energy and someone else's story. How many times have you heard a song from an artist and it wasn't your story, but you felt like it was yours? And that's the same when you talk to someone and you relate to what they're saying, and it reminds you of something that you've experienced. And so I feel like co-writing helps you, come up with all these different ideas and write about more stuff. And you don't need to have 5 lives to have stuff to talk about.
No, you just have to be empathetic.
I think you just have to be empathetic. That's true. And I feel like most of my songs, especially on this album, started with trying to encapsulate a feeling rather than I will tell a story about this, event that happened. It's my only goal with this album was to encapsulate the present moment in the studio. I was feeling all sorts of ways that summer, and I was I'm using those moments for me, and I want to use this as a diary and encapsulate how I'm feeling right now with my friends in the studio. And how does that feeling come across through music? How do we encapsulate that in a sound or in a lyric? And the most sparks of the songs started that way, just as a feeling, and just trying to embrace the present moment and to jam and to just be a little bit more spontaneous, creatively.
Does Next to You fall into the category of what you just described?
Next to You is the only one that really doesn't fall into that category. So that's, you kind of nailed that question. Yeah. Next to You was like the opposite. It's a song that took me like 6 or 7 months to write that song. And not like a 6 months of like, you know, writing it once in a while and then like, you know, taking it out of the drawer 3 months later. It was like 6 months of meeting up with, I wrote this song with my friend Patrick Watson, who's a fucking musical genius. He's an incredible songwriter. And we would meet at his studio every like week or two and really work on the song. And it took us 6 months to write the song for many reasons, but it was kind of a song that grew chronologically as I was living things in my real life. And I would like bring those little things to the studio and it was like, oh, I had an idea of like a line because like this happened. At the time I was realizing that I had to move out of Montreal. I moved to Paris 8 months ago because I needed new inspiration and because of a lot of different reasons. But when we wrote the song, I was going through that like big decision where I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here for a lot of reasons, even though I love this place. And that song is kind of a love letter to my hometown where it's like, I can't be what I want to be if I'm next to you all the time. Yeah. Like I need to grow.
I want to be better. I want to be new, but I can't be those things next to you.
Yeah. And it's a song that it sounds like I'm talking to someone, but when we wrote it, it was really about me leaving my hometown. And I was in the process of making that decision as we were writing the song. So it was like, the song evolved chronologically over 6 months and we would come up with little ideas of lyrics. And so that was like a completely different process, but it's the last song that we wrote for the album.
Is that why it's the last song on the album?
And that's why it's the last song on the album as well. And it feels a little bit different. Like it's the only ballad on the album. Sonically it's a little bit different too, like it's, you know, more piano based, whereas the other songs are much more like guitar sounds, and that one is kind of a little thing on its own, but I felt like it really closed or ended that chapter in a really beautiful way, so I wanted that one to be the last one on the album, but it was a completely different process, so I'm glad you pointed that out.
Jim Carrey being inspired by his speech on ego.
Yeah.
When he talked to like graduates, it's pretty cool.
Yes. I mean, his speeches, and he's done like many interviews and talks and speeches about how our ego is basically the one thing that's holding us back from embracing our true selves and achieving our goals. And when I started writing the album, as I mentioned, I was kind of struggling with all these different things. And I got to the studio one day and my producer, Jason, was like, we should write a song about the ego. He's like, it's so fascinating how like, that's the one thing that's really holding us back. And we started talking about that. And I was like, yeah, I fuck with that idea. Let's write a song about the ego. And then so we came up with a goodbye, my worthless ego line. And it's just like, okay, getting rid of you and trying to like embrace myself, you know, and all my imperfections and whatnot. And so we finished that day in the studio and Jason was like, you should watch Jim Carrey inspirational speeches. And I was like, I was kind of familiar with like Jim Carrey being like an inspirational figure, but I had never like fallen deep into the Jim Carrey vortex. Like I loved him and was a huge fan of his comedy and his, you know, acting and everything else, but I didn't know him as an inspirational figure. And that night I went home and I just like, you know, combed through every single interview Jim Carrey had done about the ego. And I was like, I resonated with everything he was saying to the craziest level. And I was like, wow, like this is speaking to me in so many ways. And so the next day we got to the studio and we were like, let's like write a song where I fall in love with Jim Carrey and he frees me from my ego. And he's like basically my life guru. And so it's like a super playful song, but it actually came from like a very important theme and a very important place, but we kind of made it into like a playful, quirky, tongue-in-cheek situation.
Great record, and he heard it, so you should listen to
Yeah.
it. It's waiting for you on 99 Nights. All the songs available, Amazon Music. Every song that Charlotte's put out, well, the ones that are public, available for you on Amazon Music. What are you thinking?
Somebody First. Is that a love song or what is that? Breakup song?
It's a breakup song.
Breakup song.
Yeah.
Yeah, where'd that one come from?
Somebody First. It's funny. It's the first song I've ever written with my boyfriend, who's also a songwriter.
Sick.
Yeah. So that's and it's funny because we wrote it at a time where like we were kind of like potentially breaking up, and like it was just like a really weird time for us. We had been in a long distance relationship for years, and we were at like a crossroads, and that was kind of the summer I was telling you about. That was one of the things that was not going so well, and that's when we wrote the song. And so it's a song about seeing your ex at a party and like being secretly really jealous of them potentially hooking up with someone else, but like truly knowing that you actually don't really give a fuck, but it's just like holding on to that, like, once again, that ego that doesn't want you to have see your ex hook up with someone else. And so it was a very weird thing for us to write about, like an imaginary break. I was like the most passive, I don't know, it's so weird. But it was actually, now looking back, I'm like, and we're still together. We made it through the waves.
Well, does like writing that song at that time help you guys, or what? Bring you closer?
Not really. I think it's just like, not really. It just, we just happened to write a song about that. But it's interesting. I don't think we were realizing what we were writing about. It was just like, it started off as like a vibe, and then like, oh, this is a cool idea. But now looking back, I'm like, oof, that was weird.
Who comes up with that idea and pitches it to the other person?
So to be fair, it wasn't just the two of us in the room writing the song. So there was Jason there. So it was kind of like, talking about different experiences, and it came together in a very like natural way, but still I'm kind of like, but it was a process where like we wrote the chorus, or like a part of the chorus that day with my boyfriend. And then we wrote the verses later on with Lubalin a few days later. Like it was kind of a process where a lot of people came in. And so it's not a song that's really truly about like us imagining our breakup. It just happened to be written in a time where it was definitely a weird timing to write a song like that. But
do you enjoy working creatively like that with somebody you're also romantically involved with?
It was my first, like, we've been together for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
And that was our first time writing music together. So it's not something we've done many times. And he's a songwriter, like that's what he does. And so it's definitely like it's a touchy situation, because it's like, oh, like you don't want to step on anyone's territory, or you don't want to offend the person you love, or like songwriting is a lot of like, you'll be in a room and you pitch an idea and then someone's like, no, I hate that. And it's just like, you just keep going. It's just like, it needs to be a very open, like fluid process. But if you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, it can get a little bit complicated. So we found that for us, the way that writing music works best when we do it together is like knowing exactly whose project it's for, because he's also an artist. So it's not like, let's just like write a song together. It's like, I'm working on this song for my project. Like, do you want to help me write it? And then it's like you can get into the other person's bubble and just pitch ideas, and you're not offended if the other person is like, oh, that's not like really what I'm looking for or what I wanted to say with it. It's not like a thing that you do on a Sunday, just like writing spontaneous music at home. It's like, okay, let's like set this up, have like a session, and like write something for your project or write something for mine. Like that's how we've navigated that so far. But we haven't done it many times. We've only done it like 2 or 3 times, writing songs together. I co-wrote a song on his album too, but that's kind of, the only few times we've done it. Yeah. In years.
I love shitting where you eat, so I'm here for it. I do.
How's that work out for you?
See? Yeah.
Honestly, TBD.
Yeah.
To be determined. For me, figuring it out. For you, who knows?
Who knows?
Could be great.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's definitely, now that we've kind of figured out a way to do it, it's brought us closer in a lot of ways, because we love singing together, but songwriting is like another level to that. So But yeah, it's still a learning curve for us. It's still something we're exploring.
You grow as you go.
See, yeah.
Got to give each other patience.
Exactly.
Beautiful, actually. Aren't you jealous, Dan?
No.
I like being by myself. Just
I thought you have a girlfriend.
We'll talk about that later.
Really? Wow. Anyway, 99 Nights is waiting for you. Take a look in the description below. Click it. All of Charlotte's music is there for you on Amazon Music. Final thoughts?
Did you enjoy modeling, or does that industry suck?
I hated it.
Really?
It was the worst experience of my life.
Why?
Because it destroyed every little parcel of self-esteem that I had built up until I became a model. And it's just like such a toxic industry. I've had really traumatic things happen to me when I was modeling. And like, I was really young. I started when I was 15, modeled until I was 20. And I was never like, it was more of a like low, I just traveled a little bit for modeling, but I wasn't like doing like high fashion stuff. It was more like local, you know, kind of like trying to just like make money to buy instruments and, you know, do my thing. And so I never had like big ambitions in modeling. That was never something I wanted to do for a living. It's just something I felt like I was lucky enough to do as a teenager to, you know, have a little bit of money. But I hated it. It's just like, it was like horrible. And like looking back at those years, I'm like, the things that I like, the things that people were telling me, and I just felt like I was valued for all the wrong reasons. And like, I knew that I had like something to say, and I knew that I was like, you know, I felt like I was just, valued for everything that was wrong in the world. And I was like, I don't want this. I want to say something. Like I'm, you know, it was bad. It was bad. But, you know, it's taught me a lot, and I'm like grateful for those experiences and I met a lot of really cool people through that as well. So I'm grateful for some parts of it. It's just like, it wasn't for me, and it's just something I really didn't enjoy doing.
It's gross.
It is gross. It's pretty fucking gross.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of respect for models and for people, because it's a really tough job and it's a really hard industry, and you need to be solid. Like, people underestimate how hard it is. It's not all fun and games, and it's not like
it's emotionally taxing, physically taxing. It's like manipulative. It's 1,000 things.
It's very, very toxic, and so you need to be a very solid person to navigate those waters.
Does it make doing like photo shoots for your music hard? Because just like, does it remind you of what you used to do, or are you able to like separate the two? That's
actually the one thing that I'm like, that's easier for me now, is that I know how to like,
you know how to pose.
I know how to like act in front of a camera. So that's the one thing when people are like, oh, what's like a positive thing that you take from, I'm like, well, I'm like comfortable in front of a camera, which is like, I guess, you know, a good thing doing what I do. But yeah, that's like the one thing.
It's pretty cool that you've been in a relationship with another songwriter and you've only written together like 3 times.
I know, it's
wild.
It is wild. It's wild, but it's you know, like working with a partner is you know, in any industry, I think can be tricky. You know, you never want to hurt anyone's feelings when you love them, and so it's tricky, but it's something that I'm looking forward to developing together. Like, I think that's something that's going to bring us even closer after all these years. Like, it's nice that we still have like a lot of things to discover about each other, you know? So that's one of the things.
That's a cool relationship.
Yeah. I'm blessed. It's like actually a very healthy, really nice relationship. So I'm very lucky.
Damn. Only slightly jealous. 99 Nights. Listen to it. Also, you're going on tour. Tickets are available, so grab them. Link in the description for those too. Final thoughts, Daniel?
Someone I Could Love. I like how that song sounds in my ears. It just sounds good.
Thank you.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
That wasn't a question. That was just a comment.
I appreciate it. It's one of my favorites too. So thank you.
Of course.
Is that it?
Yeah, I just had to let her know.
Okay, you can listen to that song. Click the link in the description below. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise. You guys are very fun and smart, and you ask good questions.
Well, it's all him.
Definitely not all me.
Charlotte Cardin, everybody. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.